Throughout our lives, we change, we grow, we become different people, if you like. Now I wonder, if my 11-year-old self were to suddenly get caught in a time storm and end up sitting right there opposite me, what would he think of me? What would he think of what he becomes? He would be shocked. He'd be appalled. He'd be terrified. And then he would do everything he possibly could not to become me. Now that's not to say my life is awful. That's not to say what I've become is not good. It's perfectly good. It's just not what my 11-year-old self would expect, because I've changed in the last 14 years. I think the fact that I haven't shaved for 2 days would probably concern him, as would the fact that I would quite willingly dispose of my razor, were it not for the fact that, at the present moment in time, I don't wish to look 40 years old. My eating habits he'd probably be disgusted by, because, you know, bless him, he still thinks he's got an eating disorder and he's only eating a limited diet. He wouldn't understand how I can love things like tomatoes and mushrooms, even probably pizza, anchovies, capers. I think he'd be a bit puzzled that I like to mainly make my own food from scratch these days. You know, like pizzas, pâtés, cakes, things like that, where I can. He'd wonder, why the hell am I doing that when I can just go to a supermarket and get them? There is a reason. It's because I don't want, you know, all this shit in my food. That's why I try and make it from scratch, but trying to make him understand that would be like hitting a brick wall. He'd be horrified by some of the things I've done. I think the fact that I once punched a Year 7 in the face would make him run away in terror. He would probably think that I was going to punch him in the face. I wouldn't punch myself in the face, but, you know, he'd probably think that I would. And then we come to my career. He'd just be at a loss as to explain why I'm now a full-time writer, and occasional video blogger, and essayist. He'd wonder why I didn't follow a career in history, why I didn't go down the road of archaeology. Well, to explain to him that I did, but that in the end I decided, you know, that's not for me. Even though I really, really like history and still like history, it's just that a job in history and archaeology, I just eventually found that, you know, that's not for me. Dark Legend, though, I think he'd love that. He would hold it to his bosom and he would love it like it was his own. Even though it's not his, it's mine. And then there's Doctor Who. He'd love my ideas for the series, I'm sure of it, but I think he wouldn't like that recently I've been falling out of love with it, especially with recent episodes, recent series, especially with all the poor writing. And I think he'd wonder how on earth I can sit there and analyse something on a literary level. That would just blow his tiny little mind. He'd wonder how on earth I could ever learn how to do that. We are two different people. Myself and my 11-year-old self. Even though, you know, technically we're the same, there was a point where I was him, but in the last 14 years, I've changed. I've grown. I've experienced the world. I know things that he doesn't know. He's still got all that to come. And he would never understand me. He'd be appalled, shocked, terrified even. But, you know, from where I am now, I wouldn't change a thing.